It was a quiet Sabbath morning. The sun had just risen above the hills of Galilee, painting the fields with golden light. Jesus and his disciples walked along the narrow paths between the grain fields. The stalks swayed gently in the breeze, their ripened heads heavy with grain. As they walked, the disciples reached out, plucking some heads of grain. They rubbed them between their hands to remove the husks and ate the kernels, their simple meal on a holy day. But from a distance, a group of Pharisees observed. Their eyes were sharp, their hearts set on finding fault. They approached Jesus and said, "Why are you doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" Their voices carried accusation, not curiosity. To them, even the simple act of plucking grain was considered a violation of their strict Sabbath laws. Jesus turned to them, calm and unshaken. His gaze held both compassion and authority. "Have you not read what David did when he and his companions were hungry?" he asked. "He entered the house of God, and taking the consecrated bread, he ate what was lawful only for the priests to eat, and he also gave some to his companions." The Pharisees stood silent, their pride unsettled. They knew the story well, yet they had never understood its heart. Then Jesus said something that changed everything. With a quiet strength that echoed through eternity, he declared, "The Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." Those words reached beyond tradition. They revealed that the Sabbath was not about restriction, but restoration, not about burden, but blessing. A few days later, on another Sabbath, Jesus entered the synagogue to teach. The place was filled with men and women listening intently, the sound of his voice bringing peace to the weary. But in one corner sat a man whose right hand was shriveled, twisted and lifeless. The Pharisees were there again, their eyes fixed on Jesus. They whispered among themselves, "Will he heal on the Sabbath?" They hoped to trap him, to find something to accuse him of. But Jesus knew their thoughts. Nothing was hidden from him. He looked at the man and said, "Get up and stand in front of everyone." The man hesitated for a moment, his eyes wide, then rose and stood before the crowd. All eyes turned toward him. The synagogue grew silent. You could hear the sound of a breath, the beating of hearts, waiting to see what Jesus would do. Jesus looked around at them all and asked, "I ask you, which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to destroy it?" No one answered. The silence was heavy. The question pierced their hearts like a sword. Then Jesus turned to the man and said gently, "Stretch out your hand." The man lifted his arm, and before everyone's eyes, his hand was restored. Strength returned to his fingers, his palm uncurled, his flesh renewed. The crowd gasped in awe. Some rejoiced, tears filling their eyes. But the Pharisees were furious. Instead of rejoicing at a miracle, their hearts burned with anger. They left the synagogue whispering among themselves, plotting what they might do to Jesus. Through that act, Jesus revealed something deeper, that God's commands were never meant to imprison people, but to bring them life. The Sabbath was created for man's good, not man for the Sabbath's burden. He showed that mercy outweighs ritual, that compassion fulfills the law, healing the broken, feeding the hungry, lifting the weary. These are the true works of God, even on the holiest day. Jesus demonstrated that he held authority over sin, over sickness, over the Sabbath itself. He was not bound by human traditions because he was the Lord of them all. His words echoed long after that day. The Sabbath is not about rest alone, but about restoration. It is a time when God renews his people, just as Jesus restored that man's hand. In every act of mercy, the true meaning of the Sabbath lives on. The Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath.